Hello everybody, Mr. Tabares here, prepared to show you another science demonstration today, this time an experiment called Rain in a Jar. As needed to explain the 4 steps of the water cycle that we may know as evaporation, condensation, precipitation, and collection. Now as the name of the experiment implies, everybody, what we're going to be able to see is all 4 steps of the water cycle, as happens to water as it circulates throughout our atmosphere, all take place in the space of a single jar today, so we will be seeing it rain inside the jar if all goes well. Now, in order to help us understand exactly why the experiment works, let's first do a quick review of the 4 steps of the water cycle and what's happening to water molecules at each step as they go through them, starting first with the evaporation step. Now let's pretend that this bunch of water at the bottom of the whiteboard here is a big lake full of fresh water. And of course, as the sun's rays shine down and hit the surface of the water, it causes it to heat up. And when that happens, the liquid water molecules that make up the lake water will start to evaporate, meaning they'll start to gain energy and be able to rise up in the air as water vapor, or as a gas. So as the water vapor rises higher and higher, eventually it gets too high up in the sky and starts to get too cold. It gets really cold up there. Now what happens with that, when they get up there, is the water vapor molecules will then start to lose energy, and then they're going to want to start to bunch together again and start to condense into liquid water droplets once again. Now when enough of those come together, they form what we know as a cloud. So condensation is what we call that process. Water vapor cooling down, losing energy, and condensing back into liquid water drops. Now what happens when those water droplets get too big, or when a cloud gets too big and heavy? Well, what happens is they start to fall back down in the form of raindrops, or snowflakes, or hailstones, or any type of precipitation, everybody. Precipitation is what that is. And then, of course, once all the water falls back down to the earth, it then collects back in the bodies of water on the earth, such as the oceans, the lakes, the rivers, and the like. That, of course, is going to be the collection step. And once the water is collected back in those bodies of water, the sun again shines down upon them, heats up the water, causes that liquid water to evaporate, rise up into the air in the form of water vapor, cools down when it gets too high, condenses back into liquid water droplets or into clouds, gets too heavy, falls back down in the form of precipitation, rain, snow, sleet, or hail, collects in the lakes, oceans, and rivers again, evaporates, condenses, precipitates, collects, evaporates, condenses, precipitates, collects, over and over in an endless cycle we call the water cycle. Now that's how it happens in Earth's atmosphere. Now let's see if we can replicate those 4 steps of the water cycle in our jar today. Now the way we're going to do that, everybody, is like this. I'm going to start by taking some very hot water. Everybody in this thermos here, I got some very, very hot water. So hot that if we pop off the cap, we'll see it's actually going to be steaming a little bit. You can see all that steam or water vapor rising out. So please know, folks, if you want to do an experiment like this yourself, please be sure to do it with adult supervision and make sure to be very careful, because hot water can be risky to work with. That said, I'm pouring this hot water now. Make it so that the jar is about 1/3 full or so, up to about there. That'll work. Now you can see all that steam rising on up. However, what I'm going to do now is what I have here is I have a little bowl full of ice, very, very cold ice, and I'm going to stick that right on top of the jar just like so. And with that, we're now going to wait a minute or two, and we're going to start to see the steps of the water cycle play out inside this jar here today. In fact, we can already see one of them playing out. After all, remember everybody, that water is very, very hot, which means that the water molecules are evaporating. They are starting to rise up in the form of steam or vapor, as you can see right there. However, when I put the bowl of ice on top of it, let's remember that those molecules of water, the water vapor, is rising up, and now it's starting to touch or make contact with the cold bottom of the bowl here. And remember what happened when the water vapor rose up into the sky and it started to get very cold as it got too high up in the sky. Those water vapor molecules began to condense back down into liquid water and create the form of liquid water droplets and clouds. A similar thing is happening now at the bottom of the bowl. water vapor is rising up, is touching the cold bottom of the bowl, and is starting to condense back into liquid water droplets that are starting to hang from the bottom of the bowl there. Now let's remember what happens next in the water cycle, everybody. When those water droplets start to get big and heavy enough, they will eventually start to fall back down in the form of rain or precipitation. That, my friends, is what we're going to start to see as the water droplets hanging off the bottom of the bowl start to get big and start to gather together into bigger and bigger drops. They will start to fall down back into the basin of the water to be collected again at the bottom. As a matter of fact, if we look closely, I think we might already be seeing it happen. I'm going to move my camera a little bit closer. In fact, if you look, you can see a lot of condensed water already gathering inside the bowl. Oh, and I think I saw a raindrop just fall. Every time you see the water at the bottom ripple like that, that means a raindrop has fallen down. Now to get a better look at what's happening here, I'm actually going to lift up the bottom of the bowl, let you see the bottom of it like this. Everyone, if you look carefully, you can see all that condensed water beginning to gather on the bottom of the bowl there, and it's even falling in the form of raindrops. So if I put it back on the bowl like this, or back on the jar, and we look carefully, let's see if we can spot for another raindrop. There goes one. Did you see it? Every time we see the water ripple like that, that means a raindrop has fallen back down to be collected at the basin again, to be evaporated again. See if you can see another one. Ah, and there goes another one. And I bet if we give it some time, we'll start to see even more raindrops beginning to fall from the bottom of that bowl there. So in short summary, everyone, remember the 4 steps of the water cycle. Water heats up, it evaporates. Gets cold, condenses back into liquid water. Liquid water drops get too heavy. Precipitation falls down as rain. Collects at the bottom. Heats up to get evaporated again, and so on and so on. That is happening in the jar right now. The hot water is evaporating. It's rising up. It's making contact with the cold bottom of the bowl. Is condensing back into liquid water. The droplets are getting big and heavy, are falling back down in the form of raindrops. That's the precipitation. Collecting back in the little lake or pool at the bottom to be evaporated again. So just like we saw the water cycle displayed here in that image, evaporate, condense, precipitate, collect over and over. Same thing is happening in my jar. Evaporate, condense, precipitate, collect. Evaporate, condense, precipitate, collect. And with every little raindrop we see, that is another example of precipitation in action. There we go, we just saw another one. And that, everybody, is my rain in a jar experiment demonstration today. It's a very simple experiment. You can do it yourselves. All you need is a jar, some hot water, so please handle with care, some ice, and preferably a little bowl or something like this. Something with a round bottom that can kind of seat inside the top of the jar is what works best. That's what's going to get you the best raindrops, as you can see here. So with that, thank you so much for joining me today. Hopefully this demonstrated the water cycle steps for you very well. Take care, and we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.